Shalom and welcome back to Judeacation here on JNS TV. My name is Josh Hasten, broadcasting from the JNS Media Hub here in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. The show that you are watching right now, Judeacation, we break down the realities of the situation in Judea and Samaria. That is the biblical heartland of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. And I think I have the perfect guest to do just that, to break it down. Nadia Matar has been an activist, I think, for over 30 years, perhaps, in Judea and Samaria, fighting for the land of Israel through her movement established along with Judith Katzover called the Sovereignty Movement. Before that, she started an organization called Women in Green when the Oslo Accords hit. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, but it's truly an honor to have this great activist here with me. Nadia, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, JNS, and great success for JNS that you spread the truth, and it's very important because the battle today is also not only on the ground, but also the battle for the consciousness, and JNS is helping very much.
We appreciate that. Thank you for that endorsement. I want to talk about sovereignty. Let's start with that. Where do things stand right now in terms of the application of sovereignty? We've been discussing this now for, 15 plus years with different governments here in the state of Israel. Are we any closer to applying Israeli law over Judea and Samaria now?
The answer is that we are very close to and able to apply Israeli law over Judea and Samaria. Maybe, Josh, if you allow me, we should remind people, because not everybody knows, even today, the situation, why we even discuss on sovereignty. Is there any other country that discusses whether, a part of its country should be with sovereignty? So, if you let me, Israel was founded in 1948. It's now going to be 78 years old, if I'm not mistaken. When it was founded, it was a mini-state without Judea, Samaria, Golan Heights, Jerusalem, etc. And then 19 years later, came the big miracle. The Arab countries wanted to eliminate Israel. Very few people know, by the way, that how did the government of Israel prepare itself for the war that was going to come.
The Six-Day War.
Which was going to be labeled the Six-Day War. Right. The government of Israel, very few people know that, prepared itself by digging 20,000 graves in the fields of Gush Dan, preparing itself for the massacre. Meaning the head of the government was, this is the end of Israel. That was the frame of mind. And then came the miracle. As a believing Jew, we of course know it's a God sent us this miracle through the amazing army we had. And instead of destroying us, our army pushed away the enemies, and we returned, conquered, liberated. I have no problem using the word conquer. When somebody takes something from me, I'll reconquer it. Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem, etc., and the Golan Heights and Sinai and Gaza, and they declared victory. And that's where the problem was. It was a military victory. But there was something lacking. What was lacking was also a diplomatic victory, i.e. the government of Israel should have said at the time, we were attacked. According to international law, of course, we had the right to defend ourselves. According to international law, we had the right to return to what was ours for 19 years, was under illegal occupation by Jordan and Egypt. And we returned to all those places. And therefore, we will include those areas that we just returned to within the official boundaries of the state of Israel. We're going to change the map. We're going to apply Israeli law. And from now on, there's no difference between Judea and Samaria and Ramat Gan and Rehovot, etc. They didn't do that.
They didn't do that then. And we do have opportunities now.
1 minute.
Yeah.
And they said, what shall we do? They didn't know what to do. So they created this arm in the army called that will administer these areas, the civil administration, right? And then the heroes rose up, and we're not going to talk about it a long time, but Rabbi Levinger, Rabbi Hanan Porat, a bunch of people said, what's going on here? The government doesn't know what to do, and they don't know that we have to return, reinstall Jewish life there. And then you have all the famous stories of the return to Kfar Etzion and Hebron, and I guess that one day you'll have a show just about that. And I beg anybody who's listening, if you have a connection to Hollywood, the return to Bet Hadassah of 13 women, of which my co-chair Judith Katzover was one of those 13 women under the leadership of Rabbanit Levinger. Those 13 women changed history under the leadership of the Levingers, of course. And thanks to them, Jews returned to Judea and Samaria, convinced the governments to create Jewish communities. And today you have 500,000, 500,000 Jews in Judea and Samaria, but what hasn't changed? Why is there still a question mark? The sovereignty hasn't been done. And I always say, I brought this with me, the moment you don't apply sovereignty, what message do you pass on to the world? I'm not sure it's mine. No wonder if you don't apply sovereignty that the world will say, wait a minute. If it's not really yours, if you don't apply sovereignty, then maybe it belongs to that other group that claims it's theirs. They call themselves the Palestinian people. They say it's all theirs. When we megamgem, when we stutter, then we give legitimacy to the lies of the others. And I brought with me, if you allow me, we speak to a lot of groups, Judith Katzova and myself, and to provoke a little bit and to get their interest, I always tell them the following. The battle here is between two books. The Holy Book of the Bible, the Tanakh, which we know is all about the right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. You take away anything about Eretz Israel here and you stay with a small pamphlet. We know God gave us this land. And this other book, it's a little bit of a provocation, so bear with me, written by Asaf Wall, who's a creative guy. The history of the Palestinian people from ancient times to the modern era, 100 white pages. You know the book.
Yes.
So people always laugh. I say, why are you laughing? I say, who does the world? I don't laugh. I also thought it was a funny gimmick at the beginning. I don't laugh anymore. You know why? I always raise this in front of the youth and I say, who does the world believe? This book or this book? And everybody says this. And I say, why? Why do they believe the lie of a Palestinian people that never existed? There's no Palestinian king. There's no. They even had to they lie about everything. There's no archaeology. There's no Palestinian history. No Palestinian king. No Palestinian coin. But why does the world believe them?
Why?
Because the world meets two kind of people. The Arabs, who base themselves on the lie that this is their land, but they're adamant and nobody's willing to give in even 1 inch. And then they meet Jews who say, well, for peace, I'm willing to divide my land. I'm willing to give away part of Jerusalem. I'm willing to even uproot my brothers from the Gush Katif. So when you meet those two kind of people, then obviously this doesn't belong to the Jew and it belongs to the Arabs because we stuttered. And the way to correct that, as long as there's no sovereignty, we continue to allow them to have the hope for a Palestinian state. It's not the terror. Arab terror is not because of despair by the Arabs. They always say, oh, there's despair, that's why there's terror. They still have the hope to take us away from our land and to create a Palestinian state. The moment we will apply Israeli sovereignty, once and for all, we will eradicate their hope for a Palestinian state, and we will once and for all declare to the world, we are here to stay forever. This is our land and only our land, and that is why sovereignty is so urgent. And to your question...
Yeah, I was going to push.
And to your question,
when is it going to happen?
Now that President Trump is in power, there is no justification to not push it. Obviously, we hear from America, we cannot be more Zionist than you guys. You have to do it, but we'll back you. And therefore, we in the sovereignty movement and others are now pushing our politicians, do it right now. This is the time. We have another year before the elections. This is the time, and we are happy to see. We're working in the Knesset. We'll come out also soon with some document that hopefully lots of people will sign on, etc. And the message is the time has come for sovereignty. Minister Eli Cohen says it the best. If I have to choose between a deal with Saudi Arabia or sovereignty, I choose sovereignty. And we are saying we can have a deal with Saudi Arabia as long as it doesn't come al-khishban, how do you say that?
At the expense
of sovereignty. We have to have Israeli sovereignty. And then we can also make agreements with others. But first, sovereignty, once and for all.
So sovereignty now, okay, that's what you're saying. But
absolutely.
The question is how? There are different theories out there. There are different proposals out there as to how sovereignty should be applied. Should it be done in stages? Should it start with the Jordan Valley? Should it be only what is known as Area C in Judea and Samaria, areas already under Israeli control? Should it be all of Judea and Samaria? Ambassador David Friedman has a new book now talking about sovereignty over all of Judea and Samaria, creating an entity in the Palestinian Authority similar to Puerto Rico. You have Naftali Bennett's plan. You have Carolyn Glick's plan, former correspondent of JNS,
Absolutely.
Who's now working with the Prime Minister. So many plans out there. Is there a specific plan which you think is the most acceptable to you, the most realistic, the one that will actually bring sovereignty?
First of all, I want to definitely bless former Ambassador David Friedman for his book, and in which he basically also admits that those who, like us, the sovereignty movement, who were against the deal of the century at the time, because we were saying that the good part of the deal of the century is that it talks about sovereignty, but it also spoke about 70% a Palestinian state.
That was under President Trump's first term. Right.
Thank God. Thank God this has been put away, and David Friedman writes in his book, black on white, that those who opposed it were, in hindsight, were correct, and we were the first ones to oppose it. A lot of people did not understand why we oppose it, because we cannot agree, even in theory, to any creation of a Palestinian state. They were telling us, don't worry, it's only if there's going to be so many conditions. No agreeing, even if, imagine had we agreed to that, and then Biden would have come to power, he would have said, okay, you got 30%, but now I'm going to implement the Palestinian state. So that cannot be talked about. About your very important question, what plan? As you know us very well, the sovereignty movement, for the first few years, we gave a platform to everybody. Anybody who was in favor of sovereignty, we gave them a platform. And at one point, people said, but Judith and Nadia, what do you think? What does the sovereignty movement think?
Right.
And the headline has to be sovereignty over all of the land of Israel, from the river to the sea. The question is how to do it in stages or not. But in the end, we have to have sovereignty. Israel has to be sovereign over all of Eretz Israel between the river and the sea. Now, as you say, there's different plans, correctly. Under Biden, when we felt that the political, diplomatic situation was a little bit more difficult for Israel, we said, let's start with the Jordan Valley first. The Jordan Valley is 30% of Judea and Samaria. And you have people on the left who are in favor of application of sovereignty over the Jordan Valley because there's no Arabs there, so they don't have that so-called moral dilemma
and secure borders
and the borders. And there's so that was something that we saw. There's a big consensus about the Jordan Valley. There's a concept. We also promoted Jerusalem, Rabati, Greater Jerusalem, which would include Gush Etzion, Ma'ale Adumim, etc. But now that we are in another era, an era that we have to grab with two hands, with the support of the U.S. government and President Trump, we also started thinking differently. So again, the slogan is sovereignty over everything. And then I wrote it down and there's a few ideas that are running around and people are working on it. For instance, one idea, and that I'm representing here, as you know, everything I say here, I'm representing my co-chair, Judith Katzover. She's the one who started with the idea of sovereignty in 2011 when we were in the middle of a battle you were with us even, on the hills of Gush Etzion. The Arabs were uprooting what we planted, and we were trying to save a piece here, a piece there. And Judith said at the time, the battle of settlements is not enough. In Gush Katif, which we're going to mention now 20 years, we in 6 days, they eradicated all of Gush Katif. So what was lacking to save the settlements? Sovereignty, and she gets the credit, Judith Katzover, for raising the flag of sovereignty. So there's, for instance, the idea of let's apply sovereignty on the biggest area that will include the least Arabs. To start with, again, the end goal is sovereignty over everything. But if you need a first step, so two ideas that are flying around the right-wing camp. Yerushalayim Rabati, meaning Greater Jerusalem, Bikata, the Jordan Valley, the Ariel block. Now, Greater Jerusalem, that means all of Gush Etzion, all of Binyamin, and Gush Ariel is all of Shomron, meaning that is already a very, very large part of the area. Another idea that is running around is, in Hebrew, they say, Lachil ribunut al shitchei hashiput. I took I'm Belgian, so I don't have the English. So the areas of Israeli jurisdiction, what does that mean? All the geographic areas over which Israel has legal or administrative control, i.e., all the state lands, all archaeological sites, all historical sites, and all the farms, and there are thousands of dunams that are now, as you know, there's there's many farms now that keep the land. In other words, the idea is, first of all, to make sure that you erase the concept of Oslo. Don't talk anymore in language of A, B, and C. we need to go also to B and also to A, not only C. A, B, and C, wherever we can take that is state land. There's plenty of state lands in A and B also. And you erase the concept of settlement blocks. We have to erase the idea that we should apply sovereignty only over settlement blocks and not settlement blocks. Many people talk about that. Oh, let's start with that. No, because if you do that, that means you abandon Elon Moreh, you abandon Yitzhar, you abandon small Yishuvim, etc., etc. So the general idea is, people are working on this now on a plan, but the idea is sovereignty over everything. And if we have to start with something, then we have to start with the maximum we can take that is there.
I want to get back. Thank you for sharing all of that. I want to get back to Oslo in a few minutes, but let's talk about the new reality we live in now. You mentioned it in terms of the new president in the United States, President Trump, and the opportunities that are there. But you also mentioned this is 20 years since the expulsion from Gush Katif. This summer marks 20 years. It was 2005. I know you were on the front lines fighting against it. You were in Gush Katif. But you know, in this new reality, post-October 7th reality, what should Israel do now in terms of Gaza? What should we do? Should Israel rebuild Gush Katif? Right now, the government is only talking about maintaining some sort of buffer or taking over areas for a military presence in order to provide security and prevent another October 7th style massacre. But what ultimately, looking back, it's been 20 years, what should Israel do now in this new post-October 7th reality when it comes to Gaza?
You know, on Yom Kippur we say, Hashamti, Bagadti, we beat our chest and we say we did all the wrong things. We have to, not we who fought against it, but those who were responsible for this terrible tragedy and crime of abandoning Gaza. Not only the crime of uprooting Jews from their homeland, but abandoning parts of our homeland to an enemy. That we have to say, this was a mistake, this will never be done again, and the time has come to correct. How do we correct that? We have to not rebuild Gush Katif, much too small. We have to rebuild, to build Gaza as a under Jewish sovereignty. We have to go in there, we have to make sure that no Arabs or no other foreign entity, no Belgians and no Swiss or no Americans will control Gaza. Israel has to correct its tragic mistake. Even President Trump says, why did you leave this beautiful area, right? We have to correct that by first having a military rule. Obviously, you always start like that. Also, after 1967, you had first a military rule. You have a military rule to adopt with both hands President Trump's plan of relocation. There's nothing not moral to relocate murderers who all participated in the slaughter of Jews. They will not be in Gaza anymore. They cannot be in Gaza anymore. People who murder, rape, behead babies, put babies in ovens have to leave, have to understand that they will not see the place they were in, which anyway they were refugees and never belonged to them anyway. We have to be very firm about that. So the answer is, Israel has to take control of Gaza. Israel has to relocate the Arabs of Gaza as a taqdim. How do you say that? As a first step. First step, and the next step will be Judea and Samaria.
But let me ask you this:
and it has to control Gaza and turn Gaza into the Riviera of Israel.
So, but President Trump, even though he, you said you support the immigration plan, relocation plan of Arabs from Gaza. But at the same time, the president has said that he wants to take over Gaza himself, whether he wants to build that Riviera, that resort town. And he's not talking about an Israeli resort town. He's talking about an American resort town. They asked him, how much are you willing to pay for it? He said, pay for it. I'm not going to pay for it. They're going to just give it to me. He wants that beachfront property. And as great of a friend as he is, what would you then say? You mentioned in your comments, no Belgium, no American should be taking over in Gaza. How do you explain to President Trump that this should be under Israeli control eventually and not under American control as he sees fit, part of his plan?
It's very simple. Our leaders have to tell him, President Trump, Gaza was given to us by God. It's in the Bible. We have archaeological proof that that this is ours, no different than Judea and Samaria, and we have to run it. And you will be our honored guest to be there. But that's sometimes even among friends, you can disagree, and we have to make sure to pass on in a very mechubad, in a very respectful way, to our friend, that will not happen. Israel will have to control Gaza and Judea and Samaria, and I think that President Trump will respect that, because people respect people who respect themselves, and we will lose our respect. People who give away parts of their homeland, they don't get respect.
You mentioned, I want to turn to Judea and Samaria. You mentioned the brave women at Beit Hadassah there in Hebron who sacrificed so much, literally living in, I don't know what, squalor, if you want to call it that, until with nothing, no electricity, no supplies or whatnot. But
they're heroes.
They're heroes. But you're also here because you did the same thing. You and 3 other women in Efrat went up, I don't know what year it was, you can tell me.
I'll tell you exactly.
To the Dagan Hill, and essentially established facts on the ground there. And today, if you come to Efrat, you'll see the fruits of your labor, and the fact that you have hundreds of housing units in the Dagan. You have nursery schools, and if I'm not mistaken, grocery stores. It's a developed hill.
Area.
Developed hill, and there was nothing on there. And at one point, if I understand the story, this was something that the Arabs were trying to take over, and you and 3 other women living in those similar conditions with no electricity, no food, no water, no toilets, nothing.
1993, the Oslo Accords were signed. 1995, they wanted to sign the Oslo II Accords, and they included to give to the Palestinian Authority all the areas of the Jewish communities that had not been settled yet, i.e. if Efrat on the map would be big like this, but it was only settled at the time, populated with in the Rimon, in a small area, then all the rest would have been given over. So Sharon Katz and Eve Harrow and Marilyn Adler and myself, together, of course, with the support of thousands of others of Gush Etzion and Efrat, we understood that we needed to act with the learning from those women of Beit Hadassah, that when there is a decree, you don't stay home and kvetch. You say, what a pity. No, you go out and you act. Rabbanit Levinger and Judith Katzover, who calls herself a student of the Levingers, always says you have to try, you have to open the door a little bit, and then with God's help, it will also succeed. We went on that hill, and in difficult conditions. We were arrested. Rabbi Riskin was with us and many others. And thank God we were brought down after 2 weeks and back and up. And the hill now is ours, yes. But again, as Judith said in 2011, all the settlement enterprise is not enough, because there's something that many people don't know. I know you know, but when I ask people who are very hardcore right-wing, when I ask them if all of Judea and Samaria is a beautiful cake, and the Jordan Valley, right? A beautiful cake. And according to Oslo, it was divided in A, B, and C, right? A and B is where the Arabs are officially, according to Oslo. That's 40% of the cake.
Right.
60% is Area C. In Area C, as you know, you were in Regavin, everything you know even better than I. How much percentage of Area C do we actually sit on? People are shocked to hear. They say, 40, 50, 60%.
What is it now, about 10 or less?
It was, till 2 years ago, was only 3%. People fall off their chairs when I tell them that. And then luckily, the idea of building farms that with sheep and with amazing Jewish shepherds and amazing youth, the hilltop youth who are being delegitimized so much, who are heroes today, they keep so much land. So today we're up to 10, 11% maybe. That's still not enough. And as Judith said, if we only focus on settlement, we will lose Judea and Samaria, because the Arabs, they don't wait. Every minute that we speak on this podcast, we lost another hill in Judea and Samaria because the Arabs illegally take over. And therefore, only sovereignty will protect the existing settlement enterprise, and only sovereignty will make sure that everything stays under our control.
Before the sovereignty movement, you founded an organization way back at the beginning of the 90s, I believe, called Women in Green. That was the first organization which was dedicated towards exposing the realities of the Oslo Accord disaster and everything that led to where we are now. The pullout of Gaza, October 7th, thousands. People forget, by the way, and it's very sad.
Absolutely.
People forget what happened back in 2000 when Yasser Arafat launched a war and thousands of Jews lost their lives, were murdered by the PLO, the PA, by Hamas, all the terrorist organizations. They don't usually agree on things, but when it comes to the destruction of Israel, they have different plans. But
Sure.
to that they agree on. People forget about those days, the Oslo days, the buses blowing up. I remember it was my year in Israel, 94, 95, studying. That's when the buses, the number 5 bus in Tel Aviv, the Beit Lead attack, and all these terrible suicide bombings went off. Talk just a little bit, if you can, remind people about, who Hamas was back then. And
it wasn't only Hamas, because
all the
we have
other
to be very careful not to talk about only Hamas.
the
because
PA also.
The PA and Hamas, the PA is even more dangerous than Hamas, because the PA pretends to be different, and we have to be very careful. And the PA, unfortunately, gets the collaboration of the Israeli governments, and they should be treated like Hamas. There's no difference between the PA and Hamas. But to talk about the Oslo Accords, we have to understand, October 7th happened because of Oslo, meaning you have a direct line from Oslo, in which, to remind people maybe you're right, sometimes I speak to groups of kids who think that Oslo was in, during the Middle Ages. It's very far away for them. Oslo was, but again, why did Oslo come into being? When Israel did not apply its sovereignty, and I will talk about sovereignty all the time, because that shows how, not only did we give legitimacy to the lie of the Palestinian people, all of a sudden as if it's theirs, because when you don't say it's yours, then they say it's theirs. You also, because there was a question mark about Judea and Samaria, what to do? There's Jews here, Arabs here, what do we do? Unfortunately, instead of promoting sovereignty, a group of leftist politicians, maybe with good intentions, said we're going to try to find a solution. Yossi Beilin and this whole bunch of people, because there was no sovereignty, they came up with a plan that they thought would be good, in which they brought in this mass murderer, trying to tell us that he changed his mind and that he became a nice guy, and that, yes, indeed, he was a murderer. But now he claims that he agrees to have peace with us on condition that we give him an army, that we bring in all his terrorists and give them weapons, and we have to divide Judea and Samaria in A, B, and C. Again, some people don't know that A, B, and C is something from only 1993. And here, the government of Israel at the time, who was the Rabin Peres government, did an act like Chamberlain. Chamberlain, I call it the danger of naivete. Naive leaders have killed more people than anything else. The naivete of Chamberlain in 1938, that there's this guy called Adolf Hitler who wants peace, but he only wants a part of Czechoslovakia, and the entire world convincing or forcing Czechoslovakia to give away part of the Sudetenland because there will be peace in our time.
Right.
And then afterwards, of course, Chamberlain, and there was one guy screaming, "Don't do it, he's lying." And how do they label as Churchill? You're a right-wing fascist, you're a warmonger. The same story happened in 93. Here, the Chamberlains of today, Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, try to convince us that the modern-day Adolf Hitler, i.e. Yasser Arafat, really wants peace. We just have to give him this and that. And we were screaming, Gewalt. And the only difference is that Chamberlain in 1942 said, I made a mistake. We should have listened to Winston Churchill. The Oslo architects haven't said sorry yet. There's one Knesset member, I forgot his name, who said there was a mistake. But anyway, Oslo was a Munich-like mistake that brought tragedy, and 2,000 people paid their lives because of that. 2,000 Jews were killed because of that, and so many more wounded. We don't even talk about them anymore. Those were the crazy years where you got out of the house, you didn't know if you were coming home. You remember that?
Sure.
And but I cannot only blame the Oslo architects or the Oslo government. The Oslo government was brought down, and unfortunately the right wing continued. We have to respect the agreements that were signed. No, you don't have to. Unfortunately, Netanyahu gave away Hebron, and he continued with that. And that we have to now stop Oslo completely. Meaning the battle today is not only about Gaza. The battle today is not only about sovereignty, to do the vote. What is sovereignty? You just have a vote in the Knesset. That's all you have to do. You have to, in the Knesset or in the government, right? There's two ways of applying sovereignty. We have to instill sovereignty in the minds and hearts of our politicians, because in the people it's there. The overwhelming majority of the Jewish people understand now, after October 7th, the conception has changed. They understand, but our leaders need to get the strength to abandon the conceptia of Oslo and to adopt the conceptia of a sovereign Jewish nation in its land. First of all, it has to be ingrained in our brains, and then all the details later of exactly how to do it. It won't be a problem. You have to be a sovereign people with sovereign leaders, with proud Jews who say the entire land of Israel belongs to us. God gave us this land. We don't have to be ashamed to say it. And everything else, everything will change when we will have that kind of talk.
I want to talk about one more issue. Thank you for that, which is probably on the front page of papers all over the world more than any other issue, maybe all the other issues combined, and that is what is called so-called settler violence, where residents of Judea and Samaria are time and time again castigated and thrown under the bus and accused of all these terrible things, being a warmongering society which acts violently and murders Arabs for sport. I mean, that's the image that you're getting if you see the reports from the United Nations and the European Union and those headlines in the newspapers all over the world. Tell us just, if you can, briefly, the reality of so-called settler violence. What's really going on here? The images look terrible. If you just objectively go to YouTube and see what happens on any given day or any given weekend throughout Judea and Samaria, you would think Jews are hunting Arabs for sport. And that is the narrative which is being shared over and over on the front pages across the world.
It's amazing what Pallywood can do. I call it the blood libels of the 2020s. If during the Middle Ages everybody believed that Jews were killing Christian children to bake matzahs, today people think that there is violence or settler violence. So let me say it very clearly. And just a few days ago, we got a very good example. In Gush Etzion, the Arabs called the army, claiming that settlers had come and stolen sheep or a flock and killed the shepherd. And of course, tons of army came and looked around, tried to check, and it was a complete fake. A complete lie. So that is the one time where finally it came out to the public that it was a lie. But other times when you see Jews actually confronting Arabs, there must be something going on there. So I met yesterday in Tel Aviv. We had recordings, Judith and I, we were interviewed for another TV show about 20 years to Gush Katif. And this interviewer was a Tel Aviv woman and, brainwashed with the blood libels. Says, but what about the settler violence? So I say, listen, you have a house? Yes. And you have a garden? Yeah. Now, tell me, if you have people who will come into your garden and will start breaking your window, entering your door and your kitchen, what are you going to do? He says, you call the police, right? Yeah. And what if the police says, well, we're not coming, you lady, we're not coming. Says, what do you mean they're not coming? Yeah, they're not coming. So what are you going to do? You're just going to watch by and say, let them take over my kitchen, my living room? Says, no, of course not. I'll push them. I'll try with my husband. I'll try to push them out. Okay, but what if I come with my camera and I only film you when you push out this assailant from your kitchen, and afterwards the family of that assailant will say, look at the violence of you. I won't say her name now, whatever. She says, that is what is happening here. The Arabs are trespassing. The Arabs are attacking Jews. The Arabs are planting where they're not allowed to plant. And what Jews are doing, all those movies you see, I call it self-defense. Self-defense because the authorities have abandoned the Jews in the hilltops, the Jews who are Jewish shepherds, and that is the so-called fake violence by settlers. There's no settler violence and there's no Jewish terror. There's Arab terror. They're trying to have it, even-handed. Oh, there's Jewish terror and Arab terror. Don't buy that. There is Arab terror against Jews and there's Jewish self-defense.
We're nearly out of time, but I want to talk about your baby in Gush Etzion, and that is the Uzvagan Nature Reserve. Going a little bit off the topic of what we're talking about until now, sovereignty and everything, but this is also relevant, I guess, to sovereignty. The Uzvagan Nature Reserve at the Gush Etzion Junction, which you established, what year?
The night that they found the three boys, Gilad, Eyal, and Naftali, who had been kidnapped in 2014, July 1st, 2014. After 18 days of searches all over, the boys had been kidnapped at the Gush Etzion intersection there, a little bit further down. 18 days of searches, 10,000 soldiers, and then we hear the news at 8 o'clock that they have been found not far from Alon Shut and Gush Etzion there at the entrance of the Arab village, of course, buried and dead. I get a phone call from Judith Katzaver immediately. She says, tomorrow is the funeral. We have to, tonight, make a statement of strength, and that if they think, to show the world, to show the terrorists, to show ourselves, to show God, that if they think that by killing Jews we're going to abandon our land and we're going to say that this is not ours, we have to tonight deepen our roots in the land of Israel as close as possible to where the murder took place. And we went up to the forest that belongs officially to Gush Etzion. It's a 300 dunam, which is 75 hectares. I'm not good in 300 dunam.
Right.
Of land that officially belongs to Gush Etzion, that already had been zoned for tourism, but nothing was done, and there's no vacuum. If we don't keep what's ours, somebody else will take over. And the Arabs, over the years of Bet Fajar, had taken over that our forest with crime, with prostitution, with drugs, and with garbage, years. People before us, we have to give them credit, like the Bet Sefer Sadek Kfar Etzion, the field school, which at the time was headed by who today is the regional council head, Yaron Rosenthal. They came at night to try to prevent the Arabs from cutting the trees, and our friends from Migdal Oz. And to make a long story short, they didn't succeed in keeping a 24/7 Jewish presence. We succeeded not because we're better, God forbid, but because that night was very dramatic, if you remember. And to make a long story short, we called our activists, and together with the support, of course, of the Gush Etzion Regional Council, we came there, many people that one night. We found a forest that was destroyed. Everything was garbage. The Arabs had burned things. It was horrendous. And then the wonderful people of Israel, they're the ones, it's not Judith and I, we're just emissaries. The wonderful people of Israel came out and opened their heart and opened their pockets and opened their voluntary hands and came and thanks to Am Yisrael and with God's help, we turned this place into a place, we cleaned out all the garbage, and today you have there a family living there, you have a student village there, you have a library, you have a lot of stuff. We invite Am Yisrael to come and visit and make a statement. And the statement that Uzvagan says, it's called Uzvagan. Oz, like Migdal Oz, the kibbutz next to it, Oz means strength. And Gaon is the acronym of Gilad, Eyal, and Naftali, Jewish strength and Jewish pride. And next to the Migdal Eder, we're next to the biblical Migdal Eder. We're connected to the Bible all the time. Our forefathers were here. The message is Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai.
I have one more thing to say. Can I?
Go ahead.
Do you let me
yes.
decide afterwards if you want it? Because very often we lose touch of I would like to zoom out for 1 minute, really. And I'm zooming out. We fight for the land of Israel, not only because we want sovereignty so that we should be, the moment there will be sovereignty, the Jews of Judea and Samaria will be finally with the same status as the Jews of Tel Aviv. But that's not why we fight for sovereignty. We fight for sovereignty so that it will be ours because God gave it to us. But we fight for sovereignty also because life will be better for everybody, yes. But we also fight for sovereignty because there's a larger battle. The real battle that is taking place here is on this. I brought this with me. On this flag, the Arabs say it very clearly, and sometimes we should listen to what the Arabs say. This is a flag I brought. Is it being filmed? Yes.
Yes.
This is a picture of a flag that was flown over in Bethlehem at the beginning of the Oslo Accords when the Desmond Tutu, the bishop, came to visit, and obviously didn't know what was flying over his head. And over it says here in Arabic, I wrote it down because even though I'm learning Arabic, I still have not good at reading. Yom al-Sabat niktal el-Yehud, Yom al-Wahad niktal el-Nazari. On Saturdays, we will kill the Jews, and on Sundays, we will kill the Christians. The real battle here is all in one sentence, and they're saying it. We want to destroy the state of Israel as a first course, if we talk about in culinary terms, but as an entree. The main course is afterwards, after we, God forbid, of course, if they succeed in destroying Israel, they will go on and turn Europe into Eurabia and America also, etc. Meaning we are at the forefront of the battle for Western civilization. And that's what we are fighting for. And we have to be a light unto the nation by not caving into terror, by eradicating Arab terror, by applying sovereignty, and by showing the world what a Jewish nation has to do here and to be a sovereign nation in the land of Israel and to be a light unto the nation, to erase the darkness we brought with Oslo and to bring the light of sovereignty.
Amen to that. You're absolutely right. The canary in the coal mine, the Jewish people throughout history. And let's hope for good things ahead. Nadia Matar, the legendary Nadia Matar, co-founder of the sovereignty movement
with Judith
over. Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone behind the scenes here at JNS TV, Yuri Svertsky, Esther Eden, producer, Zach Sickerman, Ryan Lifshitz, and Timur David Aklin. Thanks so much for joining us here on another edition of Judeacation here from the JNS Media Hub in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Go to jns.org for all the latest breaking news from Israel, the Middle East, and the entire Jewish world. Have a great week, everybody.